So I will start with a little introduction. So thank you all for agreeing to come and be part of our panel on mentoring. So the purpose of today's panel is to talk about your experiences in mentoring, either mentoring students, being mentored yourselves, with a focus on scholarly activity and research. So I think we'll start the panel by asking you to each introduce yourselves, who you are, what school or discipline you're representing, and then we'll do maybe a roundtable discussion around your stories. So we'd like to hear from you guys.
Sounds good.
All right.
Which side do you want to start on? This one?
Perfect.
So my name is Stephen Prosser. I'm a fourth year nursing student, so Bachelor of Science in Nursing, and I am currently right now being mentored in research. So I have a study that involves studying the resilience or the development of resilience of acute psychiatric nurses. So I'm in the process.
He is. I'm Kristen Gulbranson, School of Health Sciences nursing instructor, teach the best course, nursing research in third year. And yeah, just involved in a variety of teaching, learning, research, and yeah, I don't know about mentoring, but navigating the process of research for students, just giving them the opportunity at the undergraduate level.
Yeah, so I might have some of the similar experiences you do around that, but maybe different from the different disciplines. I'm Anami Bearden, and I teach in the psychology department, psychology area. And not only was research a really heavy emphasis of my 10 years of school in psychology, because I went into experimental social psychology, so did research at the undergrad to go through that competitive process, and master's and PhD level, continue to incorporate research, and now I'm on that side of supervising student research. And so for the 8 years or so I've been here, I've been taking on independent study students, and many of the other psychology and sociology faculty also do that. So I can speak a little bit about kind of what that looks like in our process around that.
My name's Jim Thompson. I'm one of the carpentry instructors. Most of my mentorship that I'll be speaking about today is mentoring Skills Canada competitors. But I would like to say that part of the reason I'm even at RDC is about mentorship. Mm-hmm. Years past, I was in a managerial role, and I had a designer that left to go back to university. She gave me a very nice card when she left, thanking me. And one of her last paragraph is, "Thanks for your mentorship, and if you ever get a chance to teach, you should." So here I am.
So here you are. Okay. So who would like to start with their story of mentorship?
I don't think it's fair if Stephen does. But I think we can speak together. Yeah, certainly. So I can talk about a lot of experiences, but I think today I'll talk specifically about working through a research study from the beginning to the end, and process is such a big piece of it. So is fit, so is lack of a better word, training and getting ready and being able to be prepared to be in that mentor role, but also to make sure that the process of research from start to finish happens. And I just think that students should, at an undergraduate level, have that opportunity to be able to participate in research, especially if they have that interest and desire. It sets them up for their career path. And traditionally in research or in nursing, we have had a standalone course, but have not had a lot of opportunity to take it into practice. So bridging that gap between research and practice is kind of my goal and what I love doing. I've gone to conferences with students and presented, and this would be more of a formalized, I think, research opportunity and project, because Stephen had the choice of where he wanted to go for a course to spend how many hours? Where do we at?
A lifetime. No, I have to reach 340 hours total. Is that what you?
Yeah. So
full
of course,
time for 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah. So full-time opportunity to totally immerse himself in the end and in the end of his undergraduate career. So do you want to talk a little bit about process?
Sure. So, I mean, it all starts with instilling a passion for research into students, I think. So nursing research for me was an opportunity to learn that I love research. Just like most people in my profession in nursing, or at least as a student, we want to make a difference and help people. And research is an opportunity for us to do that. So to have a course where we can learn that reinforced the importance of research for me. So the process from there was I just so happened to have Kristen as my instructor, and she knew that I was interested in research. So she asked me, why don't we just make a preceptorship of this? And so we had to go through a formal approval process through the college, Red Deer College, where I'm attending. And afterwards, we began the process of research. So first I had to decide, well, what do I even want to study? Very important question. And then it's, of course, making the right connection. So receiving ethics approval, operations approval for our project. So I had to write a research proposal, which was nice because in our program, we have the opportunity to write it for a different course. So I was able to roll that together into one and then just expand from there. So I applied for my approval after I figured out what I wanted to research, which was resiliency. And then I connected with my participants that recruited. So, which
It was a bit unique too, because it wasn't my program of research.
Mhm.
And I think that's different from what when I've worked with students in the past, it's like, oh, this is my program of research. How can you fit in? But this opportunity was, this is his interest and how can he pursue it? And working with external stakeholders too, getting ethics approval through AHS was unique too. And so I think that fit piece and that desire is really key in students. It's definitely not for everyone, but if it is for you and you have that desire and ability, I think at the undergraduate level, it's awesome. I think everyone should have the opportunity. To the extent is might vary. So yeah, we'll leave it at that, I think. And then if there's any questions or comments, I'm going.
It kind of makes good sense for me to kind of build on that, I think, because we have a lot of similarities across what you said and what I would maybe say, but maybe how it looks a little different in psychology. So in our group, we accept students every year in a formal process. It's almost like an honors degree application process. We don't have an honors degree here, but we try to provide that opportunity for students, like you said, to get that applied real life research experience that's so valuable and such a different learning experience. And that one-on-one mentorship is very different too than the classroom environment, I find. And they get so much more feedback and guidance and support, especially through that fourth year. That's a transitional year and a really kind of important year for them to decide what's next. So it's really nice for them to have that extra contact with faculty in that way too. So there's a wide variety of research projects that students get involved in through psych. And I can relate to what you're saying, Kristen, about whether it's your research program or something else. When students come to us, typically our process, they come to us in like their second or third year when they're thinking they might want to go to grad school or they might be interested in doing research. A lot of reasons why psych students do research is because graduate school in psychology is highly competitive, and you can have the degree and awesome grades, and it's like, what else do you have? And there's so many other things that you need to try and kind of build yourself up to get in, especially clinical, but experimental as well. So when they can know about that early on and start getting those other steps and other pieces in, it helps because they're going to be up against a whole bunch of, honors students from big universities who've had the opportunity to do a thesis-like project in their fourth year that's a research course. So luckily we can provide those courses. We do full year 6-credit research courses. So it's not a full-time immersion. That's pretty intense. It's still a lot of work for them, but it's like throughout the whole year, but they still have to go through all those same steps, of process of design, research design, and going through ethics, sometimes external ethics. We've done quite a few applied health research projects under psych and sociology, faculty supervision, and teamwork with community partners like you're talking about is really important in those. And so when it's a 6-credit full year course, it is like a mini thesis, so they get the experience of what it's going to be like when they're doing an honors thesis or a master's thesis or a doctoral dissertation, sorry. And we supervise them through that, but we call them independent studies because it is very much about their own skills and them going through the steps and them doing the work of going through the steps with guidance and feedback and support. So we meet with them regularly to answer questions We look over their work and give feedback regularly to strengthen it and to make sure that their writing increases and that their skills improve. We sit and have conversations about research design and data analysis with them and help them with some of those things that are maybe stretch goals that are a little bit above where they're at. But we get them through the process, and it's a really rewarding experience. So when students come in, when they apply, how we deal with that is we tell them to talk to a few different faculty, because I think it's important what Stephen said. Where's your passion? Why are you doing this? It's a lot of work, whether it's an immersion course or a full year course. We have other options where they can do smaller research projects that are 3-credit courses, or where they can gain research experience in other ways. But that's what we really promote, is those full year, going through all of the steps. When it's a half year, they're either designing and ending with a proposal and an ethics app, but not actually collecting and analyzing that data and finishing the product. And or they're coming into an already existing project to collect data and analyze it. They get good experience either way, but it's nice when they can go through the whole thing and have that ownership of start to finish of research and go through the whole entire process. Like, I did a whole research study on my own. So when students are thinking about doing that, they have to talk to us and see where they might fit, and it helps us have a better sense. And they write a statement of interest, kind of like they would for grad school, so they get sort of some skills and going through an application process that's like that. And then we sit down as a group, actually, with all of the students interested in research and all of their applications, and we decide where they fit based on a number of things. So it's hard to explain to students how it's gonna go, but how it ends up going is, like Kristen was talking about, we look at, where's this student's passion? Do we know where they're headed from here and why they want to do this? Do we know why they want to work with this person as a mentor? And do we know that they're adequately prepared? So we do screen them based on preparation in terms of statistics courses and higher level courses with labs and stuff, because it is the next step. So if you don't have those things, it's really hard to take you from not going through those steps to a full course of research on your own. So they meet certain criteria. If they meet those criteria, we try to give them the opportunity, and we try and place them. And then from there, the sorts of things they'll end up doing depends on either a faculty might say, I have a research program and maybe your interests would fit with mine, and I can fit you into what I'm doing and where I know I'm going next. A faculty member might say, I don't totally know what I'm doing for research next year. I'm thinking about starting something new, or maybe adding something, or collaborating with someone over here. And there's some room for creativity of how the students' interests will fit into that kind of team or that group. And sometimes it comes from an external source, like a community partner, and we work pretty closely sometimes with Scott Audie from the Applied Health Research. And he'll say, there's this project that is needed in Aboriginal communities in terms of their healthcare, or this project that's needed in terms of self-efficacy for people going through primary care, obesity program, health management. And so then he tries to match faculty who have some relevant interest and expertise with an interested student and teams in the community to work on those applied, bridging the gap between research and practice in that way. So I've gone through all of those different experiences over the years, supervising a student on a project that's mine, that I have to get them up to speed on and hopefully they care about, versus a project that a student comes to me with, or that's built on a proposal they've written in a course that gets me excited, that I think we can do something with, that they want to, and we move in the direction they really steer, versus joining a team and feeling a little bit out of water myself in an area that isn't my main area, but trying to still mentor the student around research process and research experience in that. So it can look a lot of different ways, but we try to match them where the most valuable experience would be for them in terms of what they're interested in, where they're going next, and who they want to work with. So that's kind of how we do things in a broad sense, I guess. Sorry, a bit of a long answer, but we do a lot of research with students and psych. So.
Yeah, the whole research aspect in trades is almost non-existent, but nevertheless, mentorship exists. The apprenticeship system is obviously an age-old system. It was always expected the apprentice would work, learn their craft, their trade, become a journey person. and learn even more and become a master in that trade. But the expectation is always, even of our students, eventually, they're going to become the journey person, and they are expected to turn around, mentor their apprentices. So it's really important for all the trades that they develop that mentorship mindset. And certainly some trades more so than others. Some of the trades, as actually right in our course outline, developing mentorship skills, and it's unfortunate it should be in all the trades, definitely. And I think they're all slowly catching up. I mentioned that I was mainly mentoring students at RDC students in skills competition, but I need to back up that that really wasn't a passion of mine. I'm not that competitive a person, and it wasn't really where I started. About 4 years ago, I had the opportunity to teach high school teachers, CTS teachers, how to teach carpentry. And that's really where my interest started, was how do I mentor those teachers to develop their students at the secondary level of skills to do better. And that was really where I started. I started doing some workshops for Skills Alberta, targeting the CTS teachers. And then it just happened. I was the only instructor non-teaching the year after these workshops occurred. So I was delegated to mentor our 3 competitors, and lo and behold, they won all the medals. And then as a result of that, the gold medal winner gets to move on to national competition. And it was a total learning experience. That was a research project in itself, but for me. And I was able to take the learning from that and create even different and newer workshops for, again, the CTS teachers, especially the ones that were already competing in skills, that were knowledgeable on the process and the competition. I was able to just, how can they teach and mentor their students to be more successful? And for that, I was fortunate. Keith Hansen was our director of athletics, and he bought into it totally. And he definitely came to realize that competitor preparedness for skills competition is identical to athletics. A lot of the same situations, the need for, preparing under duress, basically, in a really stressful situation with hundreds of people watching you, talking 3 feet behind your back at how poor job you're doing, and things like that. It was a learning experience for both of us. He contributed a lot to the second set of workshops. So mentorship, as I say, in the trades, it really is something that we need to develop in our students the time that we have them here, whether it's 3 or 4 years, because immediately once they receive their journeyman is still called journeyman status, they have to turn around and start mentoring their own apprentices.
So when you're preparing students for skills, how do those students come about that they want to go to skills, and how do you then prepare them for skills? Because skills is a scholarly activity in trades. Can you describe skills and then the preparation piece?
Yeah, that's interesting. Some of them self-identify. They're very interested in it. They're aware because it occurs at secondary school level, so we're familiar with it. But sometimes there's students that we just see have talent. Unfortunately, they have to be 21 years of age or younger. We identify talent and just ask them if they'd be interested. A benefit to them is inevitably the skills projects that they have to compete on actually involve learning this over and above the learning that we give them here. You can appreciate, if you've ever seen a cathedral, that there's a lot of carpentry skills that existed but have been lost. And some of that training has to be taken up and provided to these students, which is the fun part for us. And I know, speaking at the national competition, I was speaking to the instructor from Mohawk in Ontario. He was the world competitor mentor, and he had gone to France twice. There's only 2 colleges, I'll call them, that teach those old techniques, and they still need those people to repair cathedrals, even if they're not building them in that fashion any longer. They still need to repair them. So you need to understand So that's the neat part for me, and the other, the other, not judges, but coaches, I might say, coaches. So
And so skills is a big competition.
it's big, it's world.
So tell us more about that, just so that we have a scope.
Oh, okay. So this year, the national competition, no, let me back up. There will be a regional competition for some trades here at RDC and at Hunting Hills. Winners from that, those would just be secondary students, secondary school students, will go to a provincial skills in Edmonton. We will send competitors post-secondary, all the post-secondaries will send competitors. The gold medal winners from there will go to Moncton this year and compete, and the gold medal winners there will be eligible for World Skills next year in Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates. The last World Skills was last year in Brazil, and previous was Germany, and then England before that, and Calgary was 2009, which was my very first skills. And going to World Skills, I'm familiar with the Stampede. There were more people there than the Calgary Stampede. It was, you could hardly move.
I went to, it's so interesting you talk about places. It just brings up, I was at a teaching learning conference, and the dissemination piece, or that ability to share and network with people outside, is like the icing on the cake, the best thing, the most important thing. So when I worked with Stephen, we started the proposal. I was like, but let's talk about dissemination. This is going to be the rewarding part. Or what are you thinking as you're writing right now, right? Like, and that so often in undergrads that's lost. It's like, okay, you're done your analysis, here's your writing, project done, right? But making sure to continue to facilitate and make that dissemination piece happen is so important, beyond just with their peers. 'Cause even though that is important, I mean, they're all excited and can't wait to hear Stephen's findings in this situation, but it sets them up for, yeah, obviously it's obvious, like networking with others, and it sets them up for their career basically. And I can definitely attest to that, and I'm sure you can too, right? Like, it was 10 years ago here at the college where we found an opportunity for myself and one of the undergraduate students to go to a conference in Hawaii. We had no idea that we wouldn't be in our swimsuits all day, but we just wore them under our conference gear. And we had such a great opportunity, but now I can see 10 years later, she's completed her master's, a huge program of research, and come back here to teach because of that one simple experience of talking about getting students involved in research and interested in it. So just that one opportunity can set them up, and you can see when you look forward to when you can look back after 10 years, how that one experience would impact them so much. So I can't wait to see where you are in 10 years.
Yeah, and it kind of speaks to what Anam said earlier about really owning your own research. So following through from start to finish for me serves as motivation as it would have for the student 10 years ago. It shows us that no, you may not know the exact path right now in research. That's what the mentor is here for. The mentor is here to guide you, not mark you. So it's just really important for me to see the results. So I see that my work actually has meaning. And then from there, I'm motivated, well, let's go further. So.
Well, and one of the things that struck me about what you were all saying was, and you didn't say it explicitly, but there is a relationship involved in mentoring.
Yes.
Mentoring is primarily a relationship. And when you make a relationship with a student and you're mentoring them through a scholarly activity like skills, through an entire research project, through an intensive research experience, those connections maintain. And you follow them. So 10 years later, you know where that student is, or you know where
Right.
that student that you mentored through World Skills has gone and where they are in life. And then that then becomes the trickle down effect of mentoring.
Kristen's point's really valid, because when I started the research for these workshops, I went to the schools that were perennial winners. I called them the high performance schools. They all inevitably brought their past winners back to help their current students, all of them, without exception. That was one thing that was standard amongst all of them. So that's a really good point. Dissemination, coming back, sharing their experience.
Yeah.
And then effectively mentoring the next student.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
for trades, your students are gone by the time they go to skills. Like they're done their program.
They've done
usually
their
by the time
program.
they go to skills. So getting them to come back is a bit more of a
Challenge.
challenge sometimes. For you guys, you as a fourth year student can speak to first, second, and third year students now and start that mentoring piece now.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that's one of those things is that and that's a dissemination piece. So the Agora conference, the nursing research things.
Symposiums, conferences, workshops.
That is oftentimes how students hear about the opportunities, is that other students are doing them or presenting their findings, or and they're like, oh cool, how do I get involved in something like that?
Yeah.
And I've actually intentionally brought former students into even like an intro psych class during the research chapter to liven it up. It's not the funnest chapter in the course for people who aren't excited yet about research necessarily. And so you know, even though I'm excited about researching and bring a bit of that in, I think it makes it even more real having, you know, a fourth year student or a recently graduated student come in. And I've done that a few times where they've come in and talked to my first, second year students who are talking about research and talking about how I got to do my own research from start to finish. And I got to go to this conference with Anami and present my findings. And I can relate to what Kristen's saying. I've gone to multiple conferences with students in Vegas and California and Florida, and like former students. And what I find really awesome about that is now your colleagues, they're presenting a research together. They're standing by their research with pride. They know it, they can converse about it, they can answer questions about it, they meet other people who are interested in it. And then they're attending research. And I think it's interesting what you say about the Hawaii one, because we were in Florida at one of the Disney resorts, me and a former student last summer. And we would rather go to everything at the conference or at a positive psychology conference. And it's like, there's a talk on mindfulness or like heart math research or gratitude. And it's like, or we could do something at Disney. Let's go to the mindfulness talk. Yeah. And then it's so much more of a confirmation. We see how pumped you are about the research and hearing about the research, learning about it, how many ideas you get and connections you make. It's a confirmation, I think, for not only us to continue to learn and grow and keep that excitement in our discipline and that, you know, that connection with others, but for students, you know, it's such a confirmation for students to see, oh my God, I'm so pumped about this. I'm such a research geek now, but like, you know, I'm excited about research now and I understand it and I like talking about it. And I've had students who've gone to conferences after doing their own research say things to me like, I totally knew what they were talking about. And a few years ago, I wouldn't necessarily be able to attend one of these things, understand everything that people are conversing about, but for the most part, I can now. And that's rewarding. I also totally resonate with some of the comments Jim and Kristen and Stephen are making about the value of sort of that trickle down effect and that where students go sort of thing. It's so rewarding when those students, two of my independent study students this year have just told me they've gotten into grad school and they're close friends. They got into get together, not in the same program, but the same city, same institution at U of C. And it's really rewarding and exciting when you see that next goal that they wanted to get to, that they started doing the research for, that it did prepare them for that and launch them into that. And you can be part of that process, and it builds on that, what Allison's saying about the relationship being important, as you start to get really excited for them and where they're headed and the skills that you see them gaining. And the courses are less evaluative and more, even though they still get grades, they're more formative. It's like, I can take you from where you're at and like work with you to really transform you to be that much more ready for where you're going with this one-on-one experience and attention that you wouldn't get in a big classroom as much. So that's really valuable. Part of my passion for even doing this and being here, like you're saying, coming back and returning because of that and teaching because of that, is because of my own mentoring experiences with mentors that I've had. I was a student here 15 years ago doing research with an instructor here, the social psychologist who was me when I was Stephen, was taking me through one of these courses, believing in me, knowing I could get into grad school, helping me get there, caring whether or not I do. And it made all the difference in the world. And so it instilled even more passion for me to like, I want to do that for people too. And then how rewarding for it to be so much full circle that people who mentored me as a student here get to watch me mentor people like you do with your student now, and how it just keeps on going like that. You instill that self-efficacy and that passion for them and make that difference in their lives, and they come back and want to do it for others in other people's lives too. And that's what true learning should be, is that they're self-efficacious, confident, optimistic about their own skills to go out and make a difference in other people's lives and in the world with what they've learned. And it just keeps the positive impacts keep just going on and on that way. We don't even see where all the ripples go. That's the most awesome part.
Your impassioned dialogue there is, you didn't see me, but I unconsciously took off my carpenter hat, put on my PD hat. I said, wow, this is great for instructional vitality, obviously, because you're pumped about it. So that's
Seeing
great.
teaching as a calling in positive schooling is the strongest predictor of teacher success and of prevention of burnout. You feel like you're there for a purpose, for a meaning.
Helps a lot.
Yeah.
It's great.
For me, like being mentored through research, this is where I start to see those historic connections with academia as a trade. Because there's a reason in the Middle Ages that they were called a master. And mentoring is very much an apprenticeship model. So you're being apprenticed through your research with your supervisor. That is what it is. It's that one-on-one mentoring, apprenticeship, and master relationship. So for me, the connections there are very interesting when I start to see that apprenticeship model in the trade schools. And then for me, that is very much what upper year undergraduate and grad school was like. It was
Yeah.
an apprenticeship model.
I'm starting to see a lot of parallels too. I thought this would be interesting to hear what it looks like in his universe, but it is very much, preparing students for skills that will help them to succeed in the real world and compete within that framework. And whether it's giving back to the world with those skills or with research skills, or some other skill set in a different discipline, that's really what it's about, is preparing them to use those skills to give back and to be successful themselves, but to help others with what they've learned.
Be successful. Good luck.
A lot of
Agreed.
parallels.
Yeah.
Would you guys like to share any other stories with us? What are the most challenging aspects of mentoring?
Mentoring or being mentored or both.
Yeah. Challenging. I think that you address those ahead of time, right? Like you look for fit, you make sure that requirements and expectations are really clear on the outset. That research is a fluid process, that you need to be flexible, you need to set deadlines, you need to be prepared to write, you need to be prepared to ask for help when needed. We've worked a lot through with Stephen, and I say we because I'm mentoring him or precepting him with another faculty, and we've worked through a lot. Like, you're not handing in a final paper right now. This is a constant relationship, exactly like we talked about. Like, it is a relational experience, and they're just like other settings, there's unexpected questions that come up, but there's supports in place. And I think we're fortunate here at the college that we have an ethics board that's very readily available and very timely, because that certainly helps the whole process. Those can be challenges, like external ethics approval can be challenges because of time constraints. So really be making sure your mentor is aware of those and knowledgeable, and making sure that whoever's interested in that research opportunity is ready to be flexible with the process. Yeah.
I agree with it, a lot of Kristen's saying, and mirror a lot of that in terms of why we even have the screening for like who's prepared for this and what are their interests and why do they want to do this in the beginning, right? So that we can try to place them where it's going to be the most effective experience. I mean, it doesn't always turn out that way, but it does increase the odds of success. And the clear expectations, the fluid process, working together, the importance of communication. I think it's really important for students to know we didn't accept you to these projects, these courses, because we thought you were already a master researcher who's done tons of your own research, and we expect you to have no questions. We expect you to come in, prepared to build to the next level with our support. We want you to ask us questions. We want you to come to us. So I think regular meetings is really important, because sometimes when you're supervising a student on an independent project and there aren't a lot of regular meetings, I have witnessed either with myself or with colleagues where, maybe the assumption gets made that the student's off working on it independently and is fine is why there isn't meetings. And sometimes the student almost wants that to be the assumption that's not made because they feel guilty or not good about questions that they have or things they don't know. So I think that open, flexible, supportive relationship is really, really important as well. I think it's important that they see you as a human who did this in your past to get where you're at. And I always stress that with my independent study students, is I was you not that long ago and acquiring these skills too. And now I'm here helping you do it, and you'll be here helping someone else do it one day too. And I think we're just getting you to the next level with it. Other things in terms of challenges that I've encountered, the timeline thing is kind of funny to me when you mention that, because those applied health research projects, although there's the added value and benefit of working in the community and having a direct observable impact in the community with people, the drawback is so many more barriers. Like Scott Audie always used to say to me, I come from a very heavy experimental background where I get to plan and control everything, and even then unexpecteds come up in your research. But then I started doing all this applied health research at the college, and I remember Scott Audie always saying to me when he'd see me having panic attacks over stuff, he's like, it's like building a plane that's already in the air, right? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, isn't that fun? I'm like, I don't know if that's how I describe it. It takes a while to get used to that fluidity for students and sometimes for faculty. And also the timelines of the community don't always match the timelines of the students' research project. And that's a huge challenge. Like when we did the Aboriginal community research, working with surrounding Aboriginal communities, it was a great experience for so many reasons, but my student almost didn't have data in time because we need you to have a gathering and invite an elder so you can have, stories and sharing circles. And that's our way of collecting data. And they're like, oh yeah, a gathering will be great, maybe in May. And we're like, she needs data by March, but you can't push them to be on our academic schedule. We're working with the Aboriginal community. Could you please hurry up, community we're working with, to be on our timeline? It's really hard to kind of control those outside things when you have more and more partners and more and more complexity. So the more applied and nuanced it gets in terms of the community research and the players involved, I find the more challenging it gets to stick within an academic term or schedule in terms of the student. So that's been a challenge in terms of research. In terms of my own experience being mentored, what I find have been the most kind of challenging things is a mentor for me can fall too much on the doing too much for me or the not enough there for me. And I think finding that balance, whether you're a mentor or whether you're being mentored, is important. And it really comes back to that communication. I've had mentors that were so there for me that I might not have learned as much as I could have, or to rely on my own skills as much as I maybe should have, because they did so much for me that I was grateful for, but that I wasn't confident I'd be okay without them. I've also had mentors who almost, maybe it came from trusting my skills and my independence so much, or because I gave the impression I was so awesome on my own, because I was one of those scared to ask questions students sometimes with certain mentors. That I've had students who just didn't even really show up for meetings, or didn't even answer questions, or didn't even really read my writing and weren't really present. And I don't know if it was what they were going through in their life, or an absence of interest in me or in my work, or if it was the assumption on their part that I was totally fine and they didn't need to really support me. But because I didn't know what it was, I ended up questioning myself and my skills a lot when that was happening. I did learn to stand on my own feet more, because I did the research pretty much without any help from that person who was mentoring me. But I feel like I've also had the experience of that balance. Someone who's there for me, who meets with me, who's there for questions, but it gets me to go off and understand why and do the work. And even if they're supporting me, it gets me to sort of really understand the process. So I think finding that place where they're going to be okay on their own without leaning on you so much, but they can lean on you enough to get on their feet, that being, in that place is hard to kind of find what that needs to look like for different students too. So
it is a trick for sure, what you're saying about mentorship. Do you find that too, Stephen?
Yeah, so I found that one of the challenges was defining roles. So very much trying to find that balance. For me, it was finding out, because I've had both of my preceptors as instructors previously, so where there was a different sort of relationship. So trying to build that relationship where I realized it's acceptable not to know. It's acceptable to find out, to ask for help, but at the same time know that they're there to challenge me when I need to be challenged. So it's really building that trusting relationship together and recognizing that the experience is going to be difficult, but you have each other to rely on. You've built that trusting relationship where if I'm stuck and I can't go anywhere, that I have that person to go to. So I have two fantastic preceptors to go to. So yeah, it's just recognizing that exactly what you had said earlier. You're not going to know. You're not expecting us to be here and be perfect. We're here to grow. There's no experience that doesn't have value. So yeah, I very much understand where you're coming from and trying to find that balance. What's too much, what's too little is
Yeah.
the key.
And what's doable, right? Like
Mhm.
often in research, you have lofty, huge goals and ideas. So then it's like, okay, so it can be a challenge to be like, okay, so under this, Stephen, you can't do everything.
Yeah.
Let's, so
And-
there's so much preparation work in the beginning to set the research project up for success, and success is defined to me as learning, right?
Mhm.
Yes, learning about research process and
And that the learning process takes on throughout, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I had an experience where I spent an entire day in an office, dark little office, interpreting, and at the end of the day I said, when do I stop? Like I have no idea. So it was a point to realize that at that point I needed to move forward, because yeah, if you're taking a course, there are time constraints. So it's nice to have someone to check your perspective against. And I think that
Yeah, I love what Kristen was saying too about research being a process and students really learning how it is fluid and it's creative and it's not I think when they learn about studies being done and they just get them as this packaged kind of what happened, they don't necessarily realize there's things you would have liked to do but you didn't have time for or money for, or there's there's maybe a best case scenario. Exactly. And even if you did that thing that your dream study, like for one thing, do you have the time and money and resources to do that? But for another thing, after it was done, if you didn't find what you thought you would still have to find what was still wrong with it and what would you do differently in the future, because it's all about that critical thinking and that iterative process of growth and learning. And so I think that's something they learn too, where, like you said, it's not about this hand in a piece and it just gets like marked. It's like you give feedback and it's formative, and we do it that way too. And I think that's a cool way for students to learn too, because that's more like the real world. We don't submit a paper for publication and be like, never have to see that thing again. It's like the creepy doll in the horror movie where it's like, you're back, it's back. I thought I buried you somewhere. It just keeps coming back to you, and you have to make these changes, and that's what it's really about, is being a lifelong learner and making it better. And someone else can always offer some piece that's going to strengthen it that you didn't think about always. And that's not bad. And that when your supervisor, or two of them, that means you're lucky enough to get two people critique all of your writing. And when I tell students that, especially when they're co-supervising, you'll have that much more like writing all over what you give us. But that's out of our support for you. And that's out of like, how much can we get you to grow and learn, and how much better can we make this together? And so it's getting students to get out of that mindset of like all the red pen being a judgment or being something that's negative or that's bad, but being part of their learning and part of their growth and something that's going to build them up for the next step. So I think that's an important part of these courses too, is it really takes them out of that mindset a lot more than typical courses.
So in our last 5 minutes before we wrap up, do you have any questions for our panelists?
I'll ask questions.
Speak up for the microphone.
First of all, it was really nice to hear like the passion, the excitement on topics like this, and it actually got me thinking about that passion and excitement in a way that I have never thought about this topic before. So if you could have a little bit of advice for someone like me who just kind of thought, wow, like maybe this could be me. Never thought that for her path. What would be your suggestions just to kind of jump in? Where do I go? What do I do?
Everyone looked at me.
That's a good question. You know, I just think opportunities are endless. So like finding your area of research you're interested in. And I think the coolest thing now is there's so much research in teaching and learning.
Yeah.
So doing some research in the classroom, partnering with someone, like it's super
Yeah.
great to work on a project with a partner.
That's what I was
But-
thinking too. And when I've been in those studies that were kind of out of my element and supervising a student, I had to lean. It's kind of a multi-layered mentorship experience because I had to lean a lot on community members who are more familiar with the issue than I was in the real world, and lean a lot on Scott, who was more familiar with these applied health initiatives than I was, while the student was also leaning on me, and everybody
Yeah.
was kind of leaning on each other. And so it was like that's how I branched into that kind of unknown world of research that I hadn't done. All of my training was experimental social psych with undergrad students, and then all of a sudden I'm here doing all this applied health research with kids, and like, oh my god, I'm terrified of kids. I don't even have any. And with Aboriginal populations and all these different things that I didn't have the experience working with and doing the research with. And so I think, like having partners, getting involved in something that somebody else is confident or already involved in, collaborations. And I think the piece too, like when we talked about the similarities between the trades and these very, academic disciplines like nursing and psych, really it's about preparing those students for the real world and success in the real world and what that looks like, building those skills. And when you're an expert in your area, whatever that area is, you can bridge that gap for them better than anyone else. And so I think it's also about letting go of not only insane standards on the students, but on ourselves, because what might have held me back from getting involved in certain opportunities in the past, or what might have held me back from getting involved in those new research experiences, is if I was like, I'm not the best person to supervise them on this because it's not my main thing, and I don't feel like I'm super awesome at it, and so I'm not going to be able to provide you a good learning experience. Instead, I dove in terrified with support and felt like, I know a lot about research and I've been through a lot more of it than they have, and I can at least be there for them for that piece of it, and help them see me even ask questions about stuff that I don't know about, and work together as a team and make sure it comes together as we go. So I think when they see you as a human who's not perfect and doesn't have all the answers, and they see that research is creative and curious and doesn't mean you stumble on the answer, I think it opens people up to that like constant growth, and the fact that a human did this work to get here just like you, and you can too. And a human did the research, even the big deal research, right? Like the big deal researchers like Phil Zimbardo in my area. I follow him around at conferences and sit in the front row. But he's a person who made that huge impact in my field. And so I think even if we don't think we're great and what are they going to learn from us, we've done things and gone through steps they haven't yet, and we can give them that. And I can still follow Zimbardo around and learn from
Where's
him
he
too.
going next? You
I'm not a stalker, really, not technically, but
can stalk on Twitter. You
you
don't
know.
stalk. It's called following.
yeah, there you go.
I
But,
follow you on Twitter.
So I'm going to
Sorry,
stop
I'm taking too
recording
long.
now. So I'm just going to say thank you all to our participants for coming up and speaking to us and to our live streamed audience that's watching from a distance. We have 2 more of these sessions planned. The one on, it must not be next week because that's Good Friday, right?
No.
It's not. So next week we
Week
have
after.
turning classroom activities into scholarly activity. Then it's Good Friday, so we don't have one. And then our final one is April 1st, and that's introducing the new research common that we are opening at the college. So there will be a pilot in the spring for a research common. The plan is that will open in a physical, more permanent location in August for the fall term. And that will be open for faculty, staff, and students to support scholarly activity at the college and to bring people together. So come on out because on April 1st, we are getting a Research Common No Fool